Greetings, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Brickey here. Today's adventure, this week's update on Disneyland reopening news. It's bleak, it's bad, but let's try to make sense of it together, of our shared misfortune. This is the 10th video in the series where we look at the reopening of Disneyland. Earlier today, Disney CEO Bob Chapek stated, "Unfortunately, we're extremely disappointed that the state of California continues to keep Disneyland closed. Frankly, as we and other civic leaders have stated before, we believe state leadership should look objectively at what we've achieved successfully at our parks around the world, all based on science as opposed to setting an arbitrary standard." The arbitrary standard, as Bob Chapek put it, is based on a new level of infections in the state of California that currently feels pretty close to impossible, extremely difficult to meet. Chapek is seeing this level that California wants to get to as a hopeful day that is somewhere very, very far off into the future. Versus what Chapek and other theme park leaders would like to do is look at the reality of today and how Disney parks have been able to respond to COVID-19 both globally and domestically. I listened in on today's call and you could sense the frustration when it came to talking about Disneyland. And my biggest takeaway is the Disney CEO echoed pretty much what we all know, but it was nice to hear it officially from the big man, which is Disney does not expect to have Disneyland open during their Q1 fiscal year, which I believe ends in January. So that means we are for sure not seeing any Disneyland in 2020 like many of us knew, but this also moves up the goalpost to some point months into 21. Chapek also mentioned that there's a great willingness of guests to want to attend their parks, which here's one right here, and he believed that this displayed a trust that theme park guests have for Disney safety measures. I completely believe in Disney's safety measures right now. As I always say, the safest place I've been since COVID-19 started is downtown Disney. And he also seemed very excited about the announced Pfizer vaccine earlier this week, which you may have seen raise Disney stock prices up significantly because many people feel that a vaccine is the missing ingredient that Disney needs to move the Disney parks forward. But until then, whenever that may be, let's look at how the battle to reopen Disney has shaped up over the last week. Aaron Guerrero is the executive director of the California Attractions and Parks Association, or CAPA. It's a lobbying group that represents about 36 California theme parks, including the SoCal Big Three, Knott's, Universal, and Disneyland. Aaron stated over the last week that the current guidance will keep theme parks closed indefinitely and leave thousands of theme park workers in poverty. It doesn't seem that she's wrong with this assumption. I know many of you, as I read all of your comments, the workers are a big part of everyone's concerns. It seems like this gives me hope. Most people seem more worried about the workers than they do just wanting to go to the park selfishly themselves. There's also an enormous concern in the community about all the supporting businesses. We know Disney has the cash reserves, but what about the Ma and Pa diner or hotel on the perimeter of the resort? But the biggest example proving that Aaron's not wrong is the example of the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, which was the very first California theme park to reopen, and it has already been forced to close only after 1 week of operation, and more specifically, 1 weekend of operation. The roller coasters and thrill rides were allowed to open on November 7th and 8th, when Santa Cruz County made it into the orange or moderate tier 3 risk level, where the park had limited reservations to 300 visitor sessions each day. And on top of that, according to state guidelines, these visitors also had to be residents of Santa Cruz County. But now that Santa Cruz County has slid back into level 2, the red or substantial tier, the less than dozen thrill attractions are now closed again after 1 weekend of use, but we know the drill. Shops and food stands are still open. And the example of a pretty small local park, the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, it only illustrates how impossible it will be to reopen a park the size of Disneyland. And even though Disney has done as much as possible to speed up their opening window, and by opening window, I mean the space between when they're given permission to open until when they can actually get everything in order, cast members called back, safety protocols in check, all of the training to actually open. There's a space between you can open and when they'll actually be ready. And let's say that opening window is a space of 3 to 4 to 6 weeks. With the way that California is running these risk tier levels, it's quite possible that Disney could be given permission to open But in that space, that opening window of 4 to 6 weeks, Orange County could slide back the other way, and then once again, no, you can't open. Which would leave Disneyland stranded weeks into trying to reopen to only learn that they must remain shut down. Hey, it happened for the proposed July 17th reopening. This isn't an impossibility. So all of us, including Disneyland, needs to be prepared that something like this could easily happen again. Which goes back to Bob Chapek's earlier thought, this arbitrary standard does not give the parks much confidence in securing an opening date and knowing that they can believe, and then once they have one secured, that it's theirs to own and that they can fully move forward with a reopening strategy. But before we put all of this back on the state of California, even though only being allowed to open for one weekend is pretty extreme, Disneyland Paris had to shut back down. And some of the Asia parks have also played the game of grand opening, grand closing, as they've been forced to take COVID breaks as well. And I know there's a lot of angry theme park fans out there that think that California is 100% the problem. And while I will not argue with you, California is being extremely stubborn, governor's own words, it is refreshing for me as I'm trying to figure out what to believe here, that this is happening in other countries far away from America and America's politics. Hopefully, if you really stop and consider that, that'll help you lower the rage that many of you are feeling. We continue to urge the Newsom administration to reconsider the impact of their Tier 4 sentence for California's major theme parks. Not only does Level 4 feel more than 4 months away, but staying in Level 4 could give many theme parks anxiety that they couldn't trust any of their opening plans, having to cancel guest reservations, guest expectations, and toying around with cast members of, no, we have to lay you back off or we have to put you back on furlough. Looking at both what Bob Chapek has said and studying what Aaron Guerrero has said, it really feels as if the theme park industry just wants something that's a little more concrete, not trying to base their entire industry off of a moving target that at any moment could go one way and then quickly go back another. In a letter to his employees, Disneyland President Ken Potrock wrote, "Since Disneyland Resort closed its gates in March, nothing has been more important than fully reopening and getting our cast members back to work." And I think this is the real frustration part for Ken and all the other theme park industry leaders. They are starting to realize more than anyone, this is impossible. We can simply not obtain our goals for the foreseeable future. And sadly for them, and this is the real frustrating part, there's not even a path to get to Level 4. There are so many outside influences, so many things that are out of their corporation's control that they're literally just sitting on pause. Ken Potrock, Disneyland president, would go on to state, "That's why it is with heavy hearts we find ourselves in the untenable situation of having to institute additional furloughs for our executive, salaried, and hourly cast." Executive, salaried, and hourly cast. That's 3 very different levels of cast members, showing that this bleeding is hitting the company at all levels, because currently they have very little practical use for most of their cast members. There's literally not any way that they could imagine bringing them back to work because they are waiting on something that is a moving target that no one knows when it's going to happen. The only thing everybody does know is that it feels very, very far away. These new guidelines took the California theme park industry by total surprise. If you remember, back in September, everyone, fans, theme park insiders, everyone felt like there was this momentum that was building that the parks were going to open any day. We expected to be able to open our parks in Anaheim, given our proven ability to operate with responsible health and safety protocols, as we have in all of our other theme parks around the world. But unfortunately, this has not been the case. To Disney's defense, Disney has received high marks for its global response. And more importantly to the situation of California, the success it's had domestically with Walt Disney World. These guidelines simply just took all of the wind out of their sails and made all of their reopening plans useless for the time being. So we've really looked at this from the theme parks perspective, and I feel horrible for the theme parks. I feel horrible for their employees. It's hard to think of an industry that's been hit harder, but there's always 2 sides to every story. So let's explore right now the very unpopular opinion, is California doing the right thing? Which certainly has proved to be the very hard thing. And I read all of your comments below in this video series that now this is the 10th video I've made on this subject matter. And there seems to be a couple of major schools of thought. Probably the most extreme point of view, which I see quite often, is COVID-19 is either no big deal or it's not real, and this is Democrats simply trying to abuse control. Then the next group that's a little bit more somewhere in the middle is that Disneyland was closed to affect the outcome of the presidential election. And I'm sincerely curious. I'm not trying to be rude to your beliefs, but I would love to know, comment below, if you are in this school of thinking, when does this materialize? How far do we have to get past the elections for this plot to either work or to be proven wrong? And then the other big main camp of people is, I really want to go to Disneyland and I'll feel safe going there when smarter people than me make the decision to open the gates. I call it the I'll go when it's safe crowd. And I happen to be in that tier. But it doesn't mean I can't respect the other two. And yeah, there's lots of other individual ideas floating around, but that seems to be the major three big buckets that I could put the audience's opinions into. So let's go back and look at how California has responded to this. Back in June, when it was announced that Disneyland would reopen for its anniversary, the new COVID cases were sort of at a plateau. And it was announced that Disneyland would reopen July 17th for the 65th anniversary. That reopening date was canceled because, as you can see, the numbers really started to just do nothing but grow from the original announcement to the projected date. And if the park would have opened up, we don't know what it would have happened, but what we do know that did happen is that just 6 days later, California hit its all-time record high of new infections. So that was sort of the false opening one. But if we go back to the last couple of months, when it seemed as if maybe good news was on the horizon, around the middle of September, when fans and theme park insiders all felt like any day now they would get permission from California to begin their reopening process. This area looked pretty similar to the first area that we were in when we got the first announcement that got canceled. But if the park would have been reopened in early November or late October, like everyone thought was going to happen, we're back to now just climbing new case numbers every single day. And these numbers have been climbing and climbing. And this is all for those of you that believe that COVID is real. I understand many of you don't, but if you think that it is real and you buy into that part of all of this, like I do, you have to wonder, is California doing the right thing? Each of these moments of pause have directly been met with where the virus has started to grow more significantly. And each of these moments have supported growth of a pandemic level virus. But then there's always the argument, what about Florida? Ironically, both parks, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, sit in Orange counties. I love that fun fact. Orange County in Florida has 1.3 million residents. Orange County in California has 3.1 million residents. So roughly about 60% larger, which makes it approximately 60% larger than the Orange County in Florida. Orange County in Florida over the last 2 weeks has had 3,700 new cases reported. Orange County in California has had 4,000 new cases reported over the last 2 weeks. California is twice as large, but with just a few more cases. If we were to adjust these numbers to that 60% difference, you would see that would be the same as Orange County, Florida, having 6,000 new cases. It's a pretty big difference when you look at the size of the population of these two counties. And I know many of you don't like new cases, you want mortality rates, but I look at the new cases this way. New cases equal more hospitalizations. The more hospitalizations you have, the more overwhelmed the hospital system becomes, the more overwhelmed and fatigued the medical industry becomes, the higher the mortality rate will grow. So low mortality rates during low cases means one thing, but the two could grow in very different ways as a system becomes overwhelmed and fatigued. That's just the way that I see it. I respect your view. So no one will ever be able to fully measure the efficiency of the California lockdowns we'll have had on our public safety. But everyone can measure the amount of money lost, putting the state of California in a position where most will look at the state as the loser in this proposition. I really do not envy this decision. There are days when I think, man, they're being so strict. Why won't they just let us all get back into the park? And then there's days when the numbers are building and I go, maybe it's a good thing. I know that there are people that have trained their entire life and career to do that. I can have my opinions, but I have to trust there's a little bit more because after all, that's what they spent their life doing, and I've spent my life doing this. I'm a big dummy. And when we look at those numbers of failure, the easy number to see the cost of California's response, Disney laid off 28,000 cast members back in September. An estimated 10,000 of those cast members, or 35%, were from here in California. There's no public number yet on what that number has grown to after the layoffs and furloughs that happened last week. But whatever that number is, the amount of people that have lost their job, the amount of businesses that are hurting, those are numbers that we can clearly see. We can see the pain of this. But the one part of this that we'll never know is, by California being this strict, how many lives have they saved? No one knows. No one ever will know. Leaving California in a tough spot to do what they feel is the right thing, but definitely, for sure, is not the easy thing. And my prediction, and this has been my prediction since the end of summer, California gave impossible guidelines for a reason. They know they're impossible. They want them to be impossible because they think that the state is safer in these winter months without massive entertainment venues. Right now, November is the start of the worst 5 months predicted in COVID-19's existence. The US is getting hit with over 100,000 new cases every day and setting almost daily new infection records. Everybody is probably thinking April or May, we will be in a safer spot. And I'm predicting that around then, the state will start to loosen up these impossible guidelines, which means that somewhere in June, July, we will be back on a path to normalcy. There's already good news as far as vaccines, improved therapeutics, and it also seems like we have a new administration that really wants to take COVID very serious on a national level and get away from a state-by-state, choose-your-own-adventure. It will be very hard for Disneyland to go 15, 16 months of being closed, and some of the smaller businesses that depend on Disneyland and some of the cast members just don't have the funds to float this far. But if we look at Disneyland alone, they will learn to adapt, and in many ways, they already have began to. Because we've already seen a new evolution of what we've come to know as Downtown Disney. Special merchandising events, a Star Wars pop-up shop, the Backlot Premiere Shop, and Buena Vista Street reopening next week. This trend, I believe, will continue as Disney knows they're in this spot for a while. And when the park eventually does get to reopen, tax breaks, financial incentives, financial support will all be due to Disney from the state of California, and nationally, I believe they will qualify for all of these stimulus aids. And there's also a lot of citizens of Disneyland ready to spend. And it seems dark right now for all of us because it is, but we will get through this, and we will get through it faster if we all learn to work together. And look, I know there are different people with different perspectives. On this channel, I really try to give you my own projections, what I've learned from reading all the different news sources that are available, but also by reading your comments and keeping in mind that your opinion should be respected as I want mine to be. And I read all of your comments, and I know that many of you are really pissed off. Your personal politics and public health concerns are a conflict with everything that's happening. And I can feel your frustration and anger building as this video series has gone on. And all I can say to give you a little bit of my perspective is that things are changing. Things are happening. Yeah, we're very far from what normal looks like. And that doesn't make me happy. But right now, today, I have more Disneyland than I had on March 14th. And next week, I'll have even more Disneyland when Buena Vista Street reopens. And I know one street isn't the same as having a complete park with all the attractions. I understand, but I'm learning to let go of the past and celebrate all of my victories of the present and hoping for victories in the near future. And that's given me more hope than grief, more pleasure than, but hey, Disneyland, I have designated as my forever happy place and my ultimate hobby. I refuse to let it frustrate me like the other parts and aspects of my life. There's so much to be mad at these days, so much. Why not just pick one thing and let it always make you happy? And why not let that one thing be the happiest place on earth? Friends, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. One day when nobody's watching these videos and they're just collecting dust, we'll be like, that was a moment that we made it through. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. I read all of them. Your comments are helping me direct where this series of videos are going. I try to always look at both sides of the coin, and I try to remember a lot of people have an opinion much different than mine, and I try to learn how to respect that opinion as I would like for you to respect mine. Please subscribe to the channel so you can get all my Disneyland news videos and catch me out for some of my fun live streams. This Friday, the park may be closed, but Club 1313, we get together the 13th of every month, and this month's theme is DCA Christmas Party. So this Friday, if you're looking to have fun, real Disneyland may be closed, but you can always join me in virtual Disneyland, where we will celebrate all of the holiday classics that take place in a normal year of Disney's California adventure. Friends, until the next time I see you on Buena Vista Street, I'll see you back here on the channel with more Disneyland news. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for sharing your opinions with me and for trying to respect everyone else's in the comments below. Thank you.